Be careful when you enter Big Sky Country. You might just encounter some big mysteries. We still cannot say what dreams really are. There is science that says that dreaming helps us process events from the day and are nothing more than our minds working through our daily lives. However, some of us can remember a time when we dreamt of something before it happened in real life. And there are others that have many experiences of dreaming of situations that end up occurring in real life. I have a couple of these stories to share with you. I also would like to say thank you to all my current subscribers, my new subscribers, and all of you listening and watching. Thank you so much for joining me to listen to these scary stories. If you like terrifying tales and have not done so already, please hit that subscribe button along with the notification bell so you make sure not to miss a single scare. Now, dream a dream of a dream and listen to these stories. I Tried to Save My Brother by Rebecca Harley Quinn. A little backstory. I was born on October 31st, 1983. I don't know how much of this is true, but from what I was told, a tornado hit the hospital the moment I was born. It destroyed everything except the NICU and maternity ward. Fast forward a year and a half. I hadn't started really talking yet, and my mom was getting ready for work. I was sitting on the floor playing with my G.I. Joe action figures. As she passes by me, I said, "Mama, don't go." She stopped dead in her tracks. I hadn't even said my first word yet, and I just spoke a complete sentence. She looked at me and asked, "What did you say?" Clearly stunned by the situation. I answered her again, "Mama, don't go." With that, she called into work sick. A half hour later, a breaking news report came on the TV. On the highway she would have been driving on, at the same time she would have been driving on it, there was a 13-car pileup. My mom would have died. She told me I saved her life that day. Now, after that, my mom went on a downward spiral. She started doing heavy drugs. One night as she was doing them, I came up out of nowhere and bit on her arm. She flung me across the room, the back of my head hitting the brick fireplace. She realized what she had done and called an ambulance and the police. She turned herself in, and they put her in a psych ward. I was placed with my grandmother. My father wasn't in the picture at the time. My mom and him had been separated since I was 10 months old. He had went into a drunken, drug-induced rage, and because I had been crying, had tried to suffocate me in my crib. My mom fought him off, snatched me up, and took off to her mother's. my grandmother who I was left with when she was committed. When the family had come back to the house to get our belongings, he was long gone. Now, I had just turned 2 while living with my grandmother, with my mother in the hospital, when my dad showed up to her house with a new woman on his arm wanting to see me. My grandmother allowed it. She stepped out of the room for a minute to get something. When she returned, my dad, the woman, and I were gone. Now, this was long before they had the Amber Alert, so my mother's side of the family wouldn't see me for 12 years. I was on the back of milk cartons, and my aunt had hired a private detective to try and find me. But that's a story for another time. Anyway, fast forward to my 8th birthday. I had come to love the woman who had been on my dad's arm that day and called her Mom. She protected me from my father on many occasions when he was in a drunken rage. She had a son named Danny, and I had grown very attached to him. I had come to think of him as more than just a brother. He was like a second father to me. He taught me everything that a father was supposed to teach a daughter. Now, I loved him very much, and still to this day, I miss him. Needless to say, my attachment and connection to him was very strong. So on the night of my 8th birthday, I had a horrible dream. I was out of my body watching him as he was working on a computer. He heard a noise outside and went to inspect it. Someone was messing with his Harley-Davidson motorcycle. The man noticed my brother, snatched my brother's helmet off his bike, and took off down the street. My brother hopped on his motorcycle and took off after him. At the red light down the street, he tried to stop, and he couldn't. His brakes had been cut. So he swerved, hit the curb, flew 16 feet in the air. When he landed, his neck landed on the curb. He died instantly. I woke up screaming and crying. My stepmom ran in and asked me what was wrong. I told her about the dream. She told me that it was just that, a dream. Unfortunately, I had that dream once a week until the month before it happened. I had even told my brother about it. He had laughed it off and told me not to worry, that he wasn't going anywhere. The look in his eyes told me something different, though. He had believed me. The day came when I had been in school and I was pulled out of class. My dad drove us to the hospital. Once there, the doctor came in and told us there was nothing they could do. Danny was gone. It had happened exactly as my dream had foretold. I have never forgotten that experience. It still haunts me to this day. I still have premonitions and do what I can to help people who they directly affect. Whether they listen or not is their decision. A word of advice, though. If a child comes to you with a reoccurring nightmare, please listen to them. It may just save your life. Thank you for reading this. I'm afraid that it wasn't a dream. By literal_semicolon. I already posted this under /off my chest because it took me too long to find this subreddit, and because it's been weighing on my heart. I've only been able to tell my sister, I'll call her Michelle, because she gets dreams like this too. I really wish this was something I could put on no sleep. Believe what you want, but to me, this is 100% real. For the past 10 years or so, I've been having some dreams that partially or totally end up happening in real life. At first, they were silly, trivial things. The first one I had was back in early 2007. I was just finishing up middle school, and my sisters and I were semi-obsessed with Disney Channel shows. My dream was a harmless hanging out with celebrities dream. That particular dream featured the Sprouse twins from The Sweet Life. In the dream, I walked into a room where they were wearing fake muscle suits, one in red and one in blue, and flexing in the mirror. I was confused and asked, "What are you guys doing?" They whirled around quickly and replied, "Nothing." A couple of months or so later, an episode came out where they became superheroes in red and blue muscle suits. Unfortunately, I hadn't taken to writing down my dreams until after this incident, so I don't have any proof that I dreamt it before it happened. Another one was a vague dream about spending the day with a guy, walking around, talking, and having fun. I didn't remember his face when I woke up, but I remembered his hair. He had a very pronounced cowlick at his forehead, and how it felt to hug him at the end, and how real it all felt. Literally 2 or 3 months later, I ran into a friend of mine at a local amusement park. We were both there for school field trips, but for completely different purposes, and from schools 3 hours apart. I ended up hanging out with him for the whole trip until I had to leave. When I hugged him goodbye, my dream flashed into my mind. This trip was exactly the same as my dream, down to his hair and the hug. On the bus ride home, I stared out the window in shock. This one is documented in my journals, and I still get goosebumps when I think of it. The dreams took a turn for the unexpectedly dark sometime later. My sisters, Michelle and Lizzie, and I made friends with 2 English kids through a writing website Lizzie and I used. These 2 kids were really goofy and funny, and after talking to them for a while, they told us that one of them, I'll call him Mike, had cancer and was in remission. A while later, they revealed that the cancer was back, but Mike was going in for treatment again. Cue the dream. I dreamt that we, my sisters and I, went to visit them across the pond. I hung back with Mike's mom while everyone else played in the yard. I asked her about Mike, how he was doing. Quietly, she told me that this time, the cancer was terminal. He wouldn't make it. We got the same news in real life a couple of months after that. He and Lizzie were really good friends, and she took it hard. I think she still writes "Dear Mike" at the beginning of her journal entries, and it's been almost 6 years. I've started to recognize the dreams that are potentially real, and I had one 2 nights ago. In the dream, a friend of mine was crying. At first, I didn't know why, and she didn't tell me. But then, I realized her baby bump was gone. She'd lost her child. I hugged her tightly for a long time before I woke up. Right now, my friend is 5 months pregnant and due in July. I'm praying that I'm wrong about this dream. Thank you again for joining me for these disturbing stories of dreams. If you enjoyed this episode, please hit the subscribe button and notification bell to know when the latest horror is available. Want to hear your true or fictional scary story narrated by me on this channel? Send your story to bigskymysteries@gmail.com or check the description below for more details. When you wake up in the morning, do you think you will remember dreaming of the future? Or will you dream of friends and family? Or maybe something else? I'll see you in your nightmares. Good night.